Welcome to the Startup Club podcast, where we share the stories of innovation, failure, resilience, and triumph of many of South Africa's top startup founders and investors. I'm Mathew Marsden, founder of Startup Club ZA, the country's fastest growing tech startup community. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and share with your community.
I love it here, actually. I like what I'm doing. I control my time. I don't work for a boss. And I'm excelling because everybody worked as a normal employee, whereas I came from the School of Thomas and I'm like going, you know. I missed the guy quite a bit at that point, but I wasn't willing to go back to that thing.
Sure.
And Lyle was speaking to me, he's like, this couldn't have been for nothing, man. Like, I can't leave my best friend.
On the show today, Mitchan Adams, how a music producer turned developer battled the odds to co-found one of South Africa's leading payments technology businesses, Ozow, and since leaving, has founded Aeon's Creative Technology, a business that he's hoping is going to help other entrepreneurs do the same. According to a 2019 Deloitte report, more than 80% of South Africans have a bank account, but only 24% of them use it to transact more than 3 times a month. And while South Africa has a prevalence of credit cards, these fail to cater for the needs of the majority underbanked. And this is where alternative payment gateways like Ozow come in, allowing people to bank and make payments using basic bank accounts. And by the time Mitchan Adams, our guest today, left the company in mid-2021, Ozow was processing more than $100 million in transactions and growing at over 140,000 new users every month. Mitch, welcome, and it's a real pleasure to have you here. Now, Mitch, we want to actually tell a little bit more about your story. So just let's go back to the beginning, right? You've built a significant business, you've exited that business, and you're working on some exciting things now. But back to the start, we know that, Mitch Adams, born in the southwest of Joburg, late 1980s, just as the country was exiting apartheid. When we'd spoken before this, you had quite an interesting schooling.
Yes.
And I'm quite interested to know, did some of that frame some of the way you approach the world today? Maybe just walk us through that.
So, again, I guess this goes to my parents. They obviously wanted better for me. Being these young guys that maybe messed up, before getting married, having a child. So there was a school called St. Barnabas, which was a private school only for non-whites. And during apartheid, that didn't exist. So this was sponsored by people in the States, and money was coming in for that. I guess the school fees you compare to like a St. Stadians or something, which nobody could afford. So everybody was there on a bursary. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. Thinking back now, when I was there, it's like, school, but you were allowed to dye your hair, you could wear earring, chains, you had to be a black shoe, but it could be any shoe. Pants as well, they didn't have to be that normal grey pants, you could add your swag to it. It was about expressing yourself, being an individual. The old saying of, if you're going to judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to go through life thinking it's stupid. They realize, hey, you need to be in the water. That's where you're going to thrive. You need to be on a tree. That's where you're going to thrive. And I think that definitely shaped me fully, that schooling experience. Not making you feel like you were stupid because you didn't know something, but rather pointing out your strengths, excelling at that, and also understanding that if you're bad there, find out somebody else that can fill that gap and work as a team. And my parents, definitely, that's I think from the day I was born, they were like, this guy's going there. And you have to qualify, you have to get that bursary to get in, I was slacking off in school, majorly. So I ended up on the naughty list and had to then do matric in a brand new school. And opted for public school. I wanted a public school experience, which was awesome. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't as difficult as people make it out to be. I was the clever guy in class. I was the nerd, but I still had some coolness about me. So it was a weird year for me. I never ever thought I'd be a leader in anything. Never ever thought I'd be an entrepreneur. That word didn't even exist in my vocabulary. But being rebellious towards things was constantly there. My father was always like, why must you always ask why? Why must you always question everything? And that definitely was the school. It was definitely the place where we were, where we lived. Earlier, off the mic prior to this, you asked me what type of upbringing did I have, and I said to me it was normal, but later on in life I felt like it wasn't normal anymore. So there was a certain box you have to put yourself in to get along with everybody in the community. And I always went against that because I went to this school where they were teaching me different stuff, and then coming back where everybody was just going to government school, and I was like, why must we all have Blackstone rings with the chain, with the crucifix, you know? On the holidays, during holidays, everybody's wearing, casual clothes. I would wear my school uniform during the holidays. And people be like finger pointing and laughing, like, you're still going to school? I'm like, why can't I wear my school uniform?
Sure.
I would wear pegs, the colorful pegs, on the front of my shoelaces. Quite a cool style. You put it on the front and then it's like that. People are like, why are you wearing pegs on your shoelaces? I'm like, I think it looks cool. If you don't think it looks cool, that's up to you. So I guess in that way, yes, it made me set the trend and not be a sheep, not follow people.
Quite contrarian, right? Willing to do things differently.
But it was framed at the time that I was rebellious.
Sure.
And
most great founders considered rebels, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And you're made to feel like you're doing a bad thing in doing those things. But yeah, I think in hindsight, this is the first time I'm actually thinking of it from this point of view. In hindsight, that is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I guess it was always in my character.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, was there, some kids want to grow up and be firefighters, police, accountants. Was there something that Mitchan Adams wanted to be growing up, especially as you're getting into kind of the latter years of your schooling?
Yeah. A rapper, definitely.
Yeah, rapper. This is the Slim Shady and you coming out, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Well, more beats. I really love making beats. Okay. I mean, I made beats with my mouth. I was a beatboxer. And it all started out like ciphers. You go out in the evening, you make the beat, people rhyme. And I guess also, again, back to that schooling, they promoted creative writing and poetry and all of that. So I've been writing poetry for a while. I just didn't realize you could put it in a way that it sounds nice. And I guess later on I also found out that rap means rhythmic African poetry. So started rapping from that, just taking my poems, doing it with a different type of alliteration, and then you get rap. I think I also wanted to be an engineer. I didn't know it, but I always had these ideas. I would go into the backyard. My job was to clean up the backyard, pick up the dog's mess, cut the grass, all of that. I had these fruit trees. And I would imagine making a theme park where you're like in a giant's backyard and you had fruit trees. And one of the rides is during autumn, the leaf falls and the people are on the leaf and this leaf is just like gliding down. And I'm like,
highly unsafe. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking to myself, how can I make it seem like the leaf is falling, but still have like stuff holding people safe?
It's a creative fixing mindset, right?
But it was just ideas. It was never thinking about the mathematics and the calculation behind it. It was just like, this is a great concept. Would love to do that. My father was constantly building at home, always. Because the house we bought was just like an RDP type house, like a block.
Sure.
And over the years, he just built it. I had to build it with him, digging trenches, mixing the cement, as he calls it, the dagga. And literally brick lane work, all of that, plastering. So there was always like sand dunes and planks laying everywhere, and I would put the cars in there, construct stuff. So yeah, I think I would have been a theme park builder and DJ at that theme park myself. That would have been my ultimate job.
That's a contrarian career if there ever was one, I think. And it's interesting because if you've ever read, or if you haven't read, I can recommend it, is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, really just talking about what makes exceptional people exceptional.
Yeah.
And there's a whole chapter dedicated to specifically being good at creative outlets, music, poetry, art, whatever it might be, that almost unlocks this other side of your brain to start great businesses and build great things.
Yep.
So I can see the two of those coming together. Obviously, you wanted to get into music after school, but then you took quite an interesting trip. It was a Contiki trip. Maybe very quickly tell us about why that was so formative for you. In your outlook and also coming back from that trip, what that meant for you.
So again, just to go to the old box thing, you in this box, and I'm rebelling against this box, but I'm not seeing out of the box. I know that something can be different. There must be some sort of other world out there, but I don't see it. Remember, we were segregated, so you just didn't go to other places. And if you did go somewhere and get exposure to that, I think it was quick, it was rare, and then you had to go back to where you belong.
Sure.
So I was looking at that. So I go on this trip, it's a 30-day trip, and that box got blown wide open for me. Because now you're in Europe, you're seeing all these things. Remember, no internet, no social media, so you're not seeing this stuff on TV. The only thing you see is America. You don't see Europe. And Europe, I mean, wow, what a weird place. It's amazing. So many different cultures, so many different people, and a lot of concrete. No greenery, all of that. Met a lot of people, great experience, have fun. I was 17 when I did this trip. Went to Nice, Monaco, Germany, Italy, France. I mean, it was awesome. Came back. On New Year's Day, parents picked me up. The sun, you can actually see the sun. There's no building blocking your view of the sun. And we're driving back and I'm seeing all the green embankments. I'm like, this place is amazing. It's really, really amazing seeing more people with color, seeing... Yeah, Europe had different cultures, but it was very similar. Yeah, you got quite extremes on the cultures. But we all just embrace each other's cultures. And I was like, there's something special about this place. I remember being in one of the countries there, and they were bragging about, this is an apple from South Africa. This is one of the best apples you get. I'm like, I'm from South Africa. We don't get apples like this. Only to find out we send all our good stuff there. But this is where it's coming from. If it's here, let's do something about it. Let's work with it. And yes, that's when I decided I needed to upskill myself. I noticed a massive skills gap when I was there, that there's things I can't do that people are doing there that are my age as well. So I need to skill up, need to do something. Yeah, when I got back, it was like, that's what I'm doing, studying.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I think we'll quickly simplify this. You do end up going to study computer engineering.
Yes.
But it's almost an interesting transition. You start this at a Technikon. You end up graduating
at
UJ through some loophole in the system.
No, they do some higher learning merger.
Okay, so you do end up graduating with a UJ degree, and this is in 2005, just as we're giving away your age.
Yes. Okay. Well, it was a national diploma,
sure.
So it wasn't a degree itself. Okay. I had to still go on to do BTech in the fourth year, which I tried to do while working. Didn't work out. But I'll leave that for later. Yeah.
Sure. Let's talk first job, right? Because often this can be quite formative for people. I think much like you, a lot of young entrepreneurs might come and ask you, yes, I'm also thinking about starting something. What does that career trajectory look like? Should I go work for a corporate? Should I work for myself? Where do I take risks? So that's quite important that we frame this. But your first job is at a stockbroking business. Yeah. It is in tech, though.
Yes.
And was there anything formative about that first job for you that you think started framing some things?
The fact that it was in the financial industry, I think, was the biggest influence for me. Because then I never left the financial sector after that. And I mean, that's the thing with tech, right? It covers all industries. So I could have gotten into prop tech at the time, whatever. But financial industry, I mean, if you look at it now, it's fintech. Then it wasn't called fintech. Sure. It was just like you had a job and you were doing IT. And yeah, it definitely frame my mind as to know how much money actually is in South Africa, because we're watching the JSE, you're seeing all these trades happening. Also, just before that, maybe a few years before I got this job, the JSE and stock trading was in a room, in a massive hall, and people were just screaming and shouting at each other. And guys, I don't know.
Those classic pictures. Right?
How did that ever work? I don't understand how that ever worked. So we essentially just came in at the point where we were digitizing everything, came out of the millennium bug, and people were digitizing services, and big services like the JSE, which was not an easy thing to take on. I didn't choose to go into the financial sector. It was an opportunity that was available, and I just grabbed it so I could get experience. But quickly learned, this is probably where I want to be, is where I want to stay.
So, nothing's lost, right?
No.
And I think it is a good lesson for young founders that even if it's not glamorous, if an opportunity does come up, especially young, to get exposure to new industry as it's transitioning. I know you mentioned you were transitioning a lot of the old tech onto new tech. So quite an interesting opportunity.
And the pay wasn't great at all.
As expected. Right? As expected.
It was just there for the experience.
Sure.
And while I was there, I was trying to do my B.Tech in that first year.
Okay.
Failed every single subject because I put work first. I wanted to make a good impression on the people I was working for. I was paying for my own studies. So it's like, I'm sure I'll ace it. But I didn't. I failed every single subject because I was at work till midnight, and the next day I had an exam. But in hindsight, maybe at the end of that year, I was teaching myself stuff. And I realized how fast tech was moving and how far behind the curriculum was. I was like, there's no point in getting this paper. The paper does nothing for me. I've already got my foot in the door. That's what the paper's going to do. And while my foot's in the door, I'm going to yank that door open and go through. So experience counts for everything. Let me just get my experience, prove my worth, work the late hours. Yes, sir, no, sir, do it.
So there's a good lesson in that, though, right? You spend just over a year in this business, and then you join the business is no longer around today, but it's a lesser-known payment gateway. And again, that term was so new to the market, right, at the time. And you started in junior tech. You end up spending 7 years at this business, so quite a ride. Eventually getting into the role of a development manager. And this does become quite formative. We don't want to skip over just 7 years of your life here, but at the same time, you also start a side hustle, which is in the music space, music production, everything from recording to artist bookings, and I guess that's the creative in you again coming out there.
So obviously in the financial sector, you're learning how systems work. And I already got all these ideas, leaves falling and everything. And I'm like, well, essentially I can do anything. I can create whatever I want to. So I can think about it and I can digitize it. I can make it happen. So this is where the music industry is right now. I'm seeing how the financial sector is being digitized. How can we digitize the music industry? And I think we were ahead of our time.
You were building a music chart, right, as well,
and a place to download stuff and stream, like iTunes, essentially.
Which, again, contextually, just for our listeners, this is
before
most things,
all those
app
things
stores, so well ahead of its time. And actually, a lot of the founders we chat to as the Startup Club, often the thing that they start building is just well ahead of its time, which I guess is part of the curse of being visionary and pioneering, right? But an interesting thing, though, so just contextually your personal life here, you were busy on a number of fronts. You have this day job in tech. You're building the music business by night. You got married to your lovely wife, Shari, in 2012. And part of that new role in the payment gateway business was moving to Cape Town. Maybe talk to us about that time, because it also wasn't an easy time. That sounds quite glamorous. I think you'd also fallen on some hard times financially. So maybe just if you don't mind, whatever you want to disclose, just talk about that 7 year period and where it kind of went right and where it went wrong.
So I was also running a bespoke software consultancy with Lyle on the side, which literally just
custom development websites.
But not for massive companies
like
Joe Soap on the side. Wants a website, we'll do it for him. So yeah, quite busy. The salary that I earned at the stockbroking firm was enough to qualify me for a bond to get a apartment at the time, a 1-bedroom. And my father, I think at the age of 30, I'm going to do quite a bit of a deviation here. At the age of 30, he has 4 brothers and sisters, so they're 5 altogether. And he said, you know what, we don't have an inheritance coming for us. I think he's also seen how I've grown a bit at this point, and how the world's progressed, and how exposure has changed me, and how everybody was still locked in their own views. So it's like, we do not have an inheritance. Our kids don't have an inheritance. They're probably not going to have an inheritance for the next generation if we don't do something different. The one thing he did different was send me overseas, where he had never, ever been overseas in his entire life, up until that point as well. So it's like, we need to start building something together. So we started a family trust, and they each took out loans, and then bought a building. Obviously, he renovates everything, so because he built a house essentially. Sure. So renovates that into 8 apartments, and then starts making money from that, and then they keep building and keep building. So by the time I had my first paycheck, and that's when he's 30, right? So when I get this first paycheck, the only thing he says to me is, get into property. Stay at home as long as you can, and set yourself up. That's it. Obviously, I had to pay some bills at home as well. I had to buy the groceries, I think, I had to buy meat and pay the telephone bill. But I could qualify for this bond. I took the property and then rented it out. So essentially, I wasn't really paying the bond. Those guys were paying it for me. So I had something in my name. I just had to make sure this person kept paying their bond. Problem number 1. And then a few years later, when I moved to the other company, obviously my salary goes up a bit, rent goes up as well, but the bond stays the same. So I'm making a bit more disposable income. So I bought a house, 4-bedroom house at that point. Converted one of those rooms into a studio, and that's where I was running the studio from, and rented out the other rooms. So again, my rent or my bond should have been paid by everybody that's there. But I think I was going a bit overboard with debt and banks. NCR never existed, or rather the CPA, where they stopped you based on credit risk, so you could just keep going. I had a bank account at every bank. I had overdrafts at every bank, credit card at every bank. We need to do up the studio, mics, all of that, swipe. Home improvements, swipe. It was quite a lot of debt I got myself into. The company didn't have a profile itself, so it was all on my personal name. So I think at that point, I'm sitting at about 1.5 million cash. That's over and above mortgages.
Dead now, though, yeah?
Dead.
Over and above mortgages,
yes.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was moving down to Cape Town to get married. Obviously, thankfully, the wedding and stuff was paid for.
And your wife knew all of this, of course, going in?
Yeah, but she didn't know the depth of it, how intense it is actually. She sees me managing it, so she's like, okay, it must be okay. So we moved to Cape Town. That move cost a bit of money. We moved cars, which had to go on a train. There's the plane ride. There's all the furniture and stuff has to go on a truck, go down there. I rented a place that size, so you have to pay 2 months deposit.
And this move, by the way, wasn't glamorous.
For me, I mean, IT, I can be anywhere. But again, there was no remote working happening yet. So we moved down there. My job was software developer. The guy said, yeah, you can do your job from there. Great. Moved down. And
kind of remote working before remote working was a thing, right?
Yeah, which came with its issues.
Sure.
And as I'm moving down, the very important thing I said, that the person that lives in your place has to pay your rent in order to cover the bond. That person started subletting to other people. Those other people being, I don't know, let's call it 8 to 12, probably foreign guys living in that place. So it became like a slum village in that apartment. When I went to go see it, windows were broken, doors were just like, taken off the hinges. There were just mattresses everywhere, pee, rats. So I had to fix that up. My house was obviously empty. Everybody moved out because they were like, you took all the furniture away. We can't live here anymore. So they moved out. The studio, everything gets cancelled. So that's my music career done. While the house is sitting empty, the vandals come and steal all the copper out of the walls, chisel it out of the walls, taking the window frames out, everything. So my hope was to sell these two places, but now I had to first fix them up in order to sell it. So get more debt. Moved down to Cape Town, and you're paying rent there. So I have 3 mortgages essentially I'm paying with no income covering that. My wife couldn't get a job down there, and 4 months later, she's pregnant. So I think she had a job for about 3 months. Standing on her feet as a pregnant person wouldn't work, so we said, okay, she's going to stay at home. All this debt's mounting up. I think, okay, let me try and get a job in Cape Town. It wasn't the tech hub it is today. The salary is way worse than Cape Town. This is the other thing my ex-company did to me. They said, well, now that you're living in Cape Town, you must get paid as a Cape Townian. So my salary didn't really match my job as if I was living in Cape Town. And when in Joburg. And when I look for a job, I was told that my salary requirement is the exact same as the CEO. I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
And you weren't new to this business. You'd been working for them for 7 years, right? So it's
quite some time, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it was just policy. I was a bit disgruntled at that point.
But it's a lot happening at once. It's the financial, it's the personal, it's the move, it's the mismet expectations at work.
Baby on the way.
So just quickly, talk to our listeners about how you start to recover from this, because I remember you mentioning to me you did fall on those tough times, and you do decide to move back to Joburg as kind of step one. But how do we transition out of this dilemma that you find yourself in?
This is always a difficult thing to chat. I normally don't put it on public platforms, but I'll do it now just because I like you. So my walk with God was very important at this point. I probably had left church for a bit in my early 20s. And as I started falling on tough times, started, getting my walk again back to God. But when I was married, my wife brought me back there completely. I started attending church again. And the tithing concept came in with the music as well. My mother-in-law told me, give your talent to God before you give it to the world. And I was struggling with the music up until then. So I started volunteering on the sound team there. And after a year, the music business had picked up so much, but I actually didn't want to do it anymore because I didn't like the music that was coming out of the studio. I wanted to do something else. So I understood the concept and I worked a bit, but I had never done it with my finances because the situation I'm in. So now I'm in Cape Town. Wherever I go, any church I go into, I became the sound guy, fix the sound. And if you're the sound guy, the young people hang around you. Now that young people are hanging around us, they're like, why don't you start the youth? Cool, so we start the youth. And meeting all those young kids now, who now have kids, they're 30, they're married with kids. I met them when they were 19, 16. They changed my life more than what they think I changed their life. Because I wasn't in the same mind state at their age. Where they were, the thoughts going through their head was completely different. I was thinking to myself, what if I had started with that type of mindset back then? Earlier. I would have been in a much better position right now. And maybe
that's the advantage of hindsight, right?
Yeah.
And also, to your credit, now also wanting to reinvest into this generation with mentorship and with counseling and very much sowing and reaping principles, right?
Exactly that. But now I decided, let me try with my finances. Couldn't do a 10%, not a chance. So let me at least try $1,000. And in the Bible it says, try me, test me, and then we'll see. I literally did that. I would put $1,000 and then the next month not do $1,000 and see the difference. And the difference was I didn't get R1 million in my bank account. My problems didn't go away, but didn't get worse. In the months where I tithed, I didn't have to go deeper into credit. The months where I didn't tithe, then I had to get another credit card. There were months also where I would be like, let me first pay all these other things and then tithe afterwards. I would always fault on that. I would always find another expense to spend that money on. So through that testing up and down over a few months, I realized this is the reason why it has to be the first thing. And for some reason, like magic, it works. I can't tell you how mathematically it works out. It just worked. So that was first principle that got me, focused more financially. We moved back up to to Joburg. My salary all of a sudden gets shot up. I get a management position. I got a nice corner office. Now I can actually do the 10%. That's the first thing I did. Started going 10% in. And from that, I got an idea of I can pay off all my debts if I follow a certain payment plan by June 2016.
So you commit then and there.
Yes. I'm going to pay off all my debt free by June 2016. Amazing. It was, 2.5 years, call it.
And that ends up happening, by the way.
Not according to plan.
Okay, not according to plan, but relatively around the time you said.
Exactly
right?
The same time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk beginnings of Ozow, because you've moved back up to Josie now. You've made this promise to get out of debt, but you also do have now a better position. You're getting paid more. And let's quickly talk about meeting your co-founders, because often this is one of the things that's like the origin story, right? Yeah. If this was a Marvel movie. So we've already spoken about Lyle. Lyle was someone, and we'll talk about how he gets involved in Ozow. You also co-found the business with Thomas.
Yes.
And Thomas ends up becoming the CEO, and you the CTO, the original CTO. How did you meet Thomas? Before Ozow was even Ozow. Talk to us about that.
So he's a Frenchman. He's not from South Africa. Obviously, access to markets. He can go to the UK without needing to apply for visa, all of that. And so he became this serial entrepreneur and just kept on, flipping companies. By the time I meet him, he's quite a successful guy. He's making millions on a penny auction site. And he's a client of the company I work for because we have to process payments.
The payments gateway business, yeah.
And he's one of those visionary thinkers, always looking ahead. And he's like, why won't you guys change your stuff like this? It will suit my customers better like that. Calling into the call center all the time. People are irritated by this guy. I don't want to speak to him, And me being the guy that I am, I'll sweep the floor if I need to. In order to make the workspace better. So if nobody wants to speak to this guy and it's a client that's trying to make our system better, then let me speak to him. I'll answer the phone. So I speak to him. I'm a call center agent. Cool. I'm going to have a great conversation with you. And he had some good ideas. I'm like, look, but can't implement it just for you. Yeah, but it's going to affect all your other customers in the right way. I'm like, but all these things you need to do. No, I need to set up a meeting with your CEO. Cool. Set up the meeting. CEO's like, I'm not going to meet this guy. It's going to be a waste of my time. You meet him. So I'm sitting in the boardroom there. He comes there. And he's just this pleb. I wasn't the dev manager at the time. And he comes in and he's like, speaking to me about all these ideas. And I guess you give that false hope. Like, we'll look at these things, work on it.
And he actually doesn't realize that you're just a guy.
No.
Either, right?
He thinks some big guy
you're kind of the senior decision maker. Yeah, sure.
So he goes, I pass the information on to a CEO. I don't know if we implemented anything he spoke about. And he keeps contact from then on. Facebook friends, watches what I'm doing. Lyle and I, we were doing the bespoke thing, but we were also doing our own platforms. We tried to do a gaming platform called Game Time as well, which again was ahead of its time, because look at esports now. And it was essentially an esports platform. And he's just commenting, this is a great platform, all of that. So he sees me from this position of big shot in a payments company to doing all these side hustle things to a point where he wants to do something new again. We wanted to revive one of his businesses, and he always had to pay these developers offshore, always Russian guys. And he's like, I need people with skin in the game with me. So he gives me a call. This is about end of 2013, close to the end of 2013.
So you do go on, I know after Thomas had approached you a couple of times, you do go on to leave this payment gateway business and obviously join Thomas in almost a digital agency function.
So it was a digital agency, but we were trying a bunch of other stuff on the side, like a think tank.
Of course.
Yeah.
And you realized that some of the clients you previously dealt with had lacked an e-commerce solution. So you start building something called iCommerce. And again, this is really before e-commerce becomes a thing in South Africa, let alone digital payments. And you guys run into the problem of payment gateways. You'd had tons of experience in this space, having worked in really one of the pioneers in the country. And so you start to develop a payment gateway code base from scratch, effectively.
Before that, all the things we were doing was like grasping at straws with this could work out, this could work out, this could work out. And there were many things we tried. There was iCommerce, there was like a domain registration thing as well. And rightly so, the payment part came out of the fact that the payment gateways out there weren't serving the purpose of this iCommerce platform well enough. So we had to build that thing, obviously at risk because I was under restraint.
And just talking to that, because I think a lot of founders really wait for the perfect time, right? You're financially set, the market's ready for what you're building, there's a big enough gap and you've got the proficiency to fill it. Like that really rarely happens. And just to touch on the point that you'd mentioned there, you guys formally decided to start what was initially known as iPay in 2014. Again, it's yourself, Thomas, and Lyle. But your previous employer, the Gateway, that you previously worked for so many years, actually got word of this and enforced a restraint of trade on you, which would effectively prohibit you from taking what they would call trade secrets and IP and all these things and using it for another business's commercial gain. To the point where it actually goes to a court case and you lose.
There were two parts of the court case. One was restraint and the other one was that I stole the code, essentially, and IP and all of that.
And this was the code base you were building from scratch for this
brand
new payment gateway to suit your own needs, right, that you discovered, sure.
I mean, there's many big differences that was in what we were creating versus what existed at the time. I was told nobody wins a restraint. We were going to register in Mauritius anyways, and, we want to be an international company, and the restraint was only for South Africa. But I think a week before the Mauritian company actually got set up, we got an affidavit served to us, and you read an affidavit, you feel guilty. The way things are worded, the evidence lined up to you, you're like, maybe I did steal the code, but you didn't. Deep down you didn't. So when you get to sit down with your lawyers and tell your side of the story, you're like, yes, I knew I didn't steal it. And then you give that, and then he comes back and up and down. I think the court case was, so we lost the restraint. Maybe it's the first time in history somebody lost the restraint thing. But I think we mainly lost because we couldn't pay the lawyers. And we had to hand over all our code to these guys. They were going to lock it up into a safe, and then the second part of the court case was going to happen. These guys were suing us for 60 million. Also, what you need to remember is I was in a bad debt situation. I had a payment plan. By the time I started this company, I thought I was going to keep going in that positive direction. That created a hectic problem for me. I went way off my plan. Going into this business, everybody, from my parents, my in-laws, to my wife, was like, do you want to leave the stable job for this wild ride and put your family in jeopardy again? I was like, no, it won't be a wild ride. This guy knows what he's doing. And
it was a wild ride.
It was
from day one. Yes.
Ride. So a lot of resentment going on between myself and Thomas and the other guys, to my wife, in-laws, all of that. And our money problems just get worse. Phone bill, I don't think we had a phone, but electricity bill constantly piling up. They cut us off so many times. I had to pull my kids out of school. So they started getting homeschooled because we couldn't afford school. My wife wasn't working, and thankfully so, because she could be at home with the kids. And you can't afford a helper, so at least she can clean, look after the kids. But so much pressure I put on her.
So much at once. Yeah.
I'm not at home because I'm constantly trying to work on this stuff, chasing the next thing, late hours, early mornings, adding more to that dynamic. So at this point where we're getting sued now, it's just like the cherry on top for 60 million. I felt almost like it was a blessing in disguise because I got to exit the situation because we weren't getting along. We were fighting. We were fighting with each other big time. And I thought maybe I can go back to corporate and, start over. But working with Thomas also changed a lot inside of me. As frustrating as it was at times, he showed me that you should never settle for things. You should always chase for what you want. And the day ends at 5, but if you haven't achieved your goal, keep going. Because tomorrow you're going to start again, and by the end of the day, you're only going to get to the point where you're about to achieve your goal and you're stopping and then you're restarting again. Push through, achieve your goal, and then tomorrow you're on the next mission, which takes you out of your comfort zone. And I guess that's why we fought a lot. And that's also why I appreciate what I got out of the guy. He pushed me. I compare him to Elon Musk merged with Steve Jobs. And honestly, anybody that worked under those two guys are killing it right now anywhere in the world. They're running their own startups as well. And that's what you get from a guy like that. So as much as we fought, I appreciated some stuff of that. And I said, I'll never actually work for another boss again. So at the point when we had to leave, it was December 2014. You can't find a job in December. I was just like, I'm not looking for a job. I am going to go on to...
Again, just context you. This is because you've been restrained for 6 months.
Yeah.
You have to go and get some income
sort
somewhere,
of income, some way. And the core case is there, 60 million. I don't know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, that's the second part.
Are we going to do that? But right now, I need to feed my family. But I was like, I'm not even going to look for a job. I'll go on to Gumtree. I'll see people looking for developers and understand what their ideas are and then co-found stuff for them. And I found a bunch of people there, but they weren't Thomas. They weren't Thomas caliber. I was like, nah. You guys are chances. I can see why everybody's failing at this stuff. You got an idea, you want a software developer to come in and do everything for you, and then you got a business. You need to bring something to the party as well. So
April 2015, you don't really want to go back to iPay because you've just been through really business hell and being attacked from almost every side. Thomas, being the compelling, probably charismatic visionary that he is, convinces you to come back in October 2015.
I wouldn't say it's Thomas.
Okay.
There's more Lyle.
Okay.
Him being my best friend.
Yes.
I've pulled out of this thing. And
you'd kind of pulled him in, actually, initially, right?
Yes.
So now you
I
almost
pull
feel,
him in, I leave.
Yeah.
Now he's stuck in the situation. I've gone to a place where life's much better. Standard Bank kept on renewing my contract. Sure. And I was like, I love it here, actually. I like what I'm doing. I control my time. I don't work for a boss. And I'm excelling because everybody worked as a normal employee, whereas I came from the school of Thomas, and I'm like going, I missed the guy quite a bit at that point, but I wasn't willing to go back to that thing.
Sure.
And Lyle was speaking to me. He's like, this couldn't have been for nothing, man. I'm like, I can't leave my best friend in this rut. I need to help him out. If not to get him out, but to solve this thing. And the court case is still going on, so I'm still tied to it. Sure.
Yeah, a lot of people will ask if it's wise to get into business with friends. And I'm sure you've got some interesting thoughts on that. Maybe offline, or people can reach out to you. But it's like friendship, it's probably a journey as well, right? The co-founding relationship.
Yeah.
You do end up getting back into the business,
yes.
right? And so let's quickly fast forward slightly to 2016, because this starts to become quite formative. Again, you're focusing heavily on iPay. You land another big client at the time, which is PayU. And in 2016, of course, now it starts to get to that point where you know you need to start raising capital, you need to start growing the name of the business, and you start doing some roadshows around the country, some competitions. Maybe just talk about that kind of inflection point in the business where you've moved from a product to landing first customer to how we start going about that cap raise and beyond.
So the PayU relationship had started already way before that.
Okay.
But that deal took, I think, maybe almost 2 years to come right. Actually, a year or so. That first amount of money, okay, I'll name drop a few people. So this guy called Yossi Asson. He ran a company called Sanek, which again, coincidentally, was at the bottom floor of my old company's building. So I was on top, he was at the bottom. I saw the guy. I never knew his name. And we were like hello friends, like hi. Now I'm meeting him, and he had just sold his business to Dimension Data for quite a bit of money. Thomas, obviously being a serial entrepreneur, knew a bunch of these guys. So he's like, Yossi, you know how to close a deal like this. Help us get our numbers and our presentation to a point that proves that we can deliver exactly what you delivered and close a decent deal. And then we'll give you, a small stake in the company. So he got involved there. Justin Drennan, he started Want It All. He also started Parcel Ninja, went on to sell it to Imperial now. He also well-connected guy. Thomas also knew him, brought him in. He's like, a bunch of investors.
That's about bringing in value-adding people, though, right? Who've been there and done that.
Yeah,
which most founders actually are super reluctant to do.
It's very, very. It's like, this is my idea.
Yeah, exactly. But if you want to get to that inflection growth point,
you need
to bite the bullet.
So we brought him in and we said, look, people, spread the word, get us to meet some people, and if you can bring in the money, then great. We'll give you a small portion, and that's essentially how it started. And then between myself and Thomas, Lyle's very introverted, I would say. So he's stuck to the code. Thomas, amazing salesman, amazing marketer, but doesn't know the tech aspects of it. So he would bring me in. So I'm
kind of the bridge.
I'm an extroverted introvert. So if I don't know you, I'm be shy. But once I know you, you can't get me to shut up. So he would take me with him in all of the sales meetings, and we were just doing pitch dens everywhere. And I guess him being French as well, he felt maybe it was an issue in a South African context, so putting me on stage rather with my accent, all of that, which I had a problem with. Everybody had American accents in these pitch dens, American or English accents, because we would pitch all over Africa. Well, not all over Africa, but the stage was an African-based stage. And I would speak to people and say, I really think I should just fake an American accent because I can't do it, right? I'm always making accents.
It's the rapper in
you.
Coming out again.
So on one stage, this French guy came to me and said, it's so refreshing to hear a genuine African accent. Don't worry about these other people's accents. I can hear you the real story. And that's what grabs the emotion on people. You speak to the numbers, but you also need to pull on the heartstrings. So those pitch dens happened. We got into Techstars, which was Barclays' program at the time.
Yep.
I think it was a bit of a issue for Yossi at the time because he was the CEO of Techstars at that time. But I don't think he ever thought we'd make it that far. We got to top 20, and he was like, look, I can't vote on this, guys.
Yes,
like,
of course.
I actually have an interest here. Only the top 10 get in. It was at Absa Towers in the middle of the city. I had said my father was a DBA for 30 years at at Absa. So I get there, and I actually bump into him by accident. It's like, what you doing here? No, I'm here for Techstars, which obviously was a thing in the company. And like, you got into the top 20? Wow. And I say this, my father and I have a funny conversation about this all the time, but that's the first time I actually felt like my father displayed some sort of pride in me, like, this is my light, just introducing me to people everywhere. And then we went in, we did our presentation. And it was split 50-50. I think half of the guys were like, brilliant, we need this. This is going to take us to the next level. This is the progression of payments. The rest of the guys are like, we are bank guys. We can't allow something like this to come in. It's going to affect us negatively. So we didn't get in. But what that did was, maybe for your seat, was like, whoa, these guys made it this far. There's something here. I mean, he helped us quite a bit to get our numbers right. Justin had his conversations, and then when he said these guys got there, people were like, you know what, let's take a chance on these guys. And there was a property consortium, Buffett Investment. And we're like, let's go into tech and give them some money. And that kicked us off. We got 10 million from that, and we could start hiring people.
Amazing. That's obviously May 2016.
Yep.
You raised the 10 million from Buffett. And
but just on that as well, that's where my debt gets paid off.
Which is the 2016 that you told us about earlier.
Like in June,
uncanny.
Yeah.
Right? It's some people might again say coincidence, but you'd planned this, right? It was a real faith journey, I reckon.
Yeah, I planned it.
A couple of questions I want to ask you, but just very quickly to maybe cap off the capital raising journey. Ozow's raised quite a lot of money over the last couple of years. So there was the 2016 round from Buffett. You raise a seed extension from Kalon Venture Partners, very well-known Series A investor in the South African venture market. This is November 2017, and that actually coincides with your rebrand to Ozow.
Yeah. I think that was more in 2018.
Okay, 2017, 2018. And as part of your formal Series A, you raise close to $3 million again from Kalon, led by Kalon at least, June 2019. So we're fast-tracking the years a little bit here, but presumably capital's following progress and following traction and a growing metric. And of course, Ozow starts becoming very, very well-known, both consumer-wise and investor-wise. Yeah. I think you'd mentioned to me what was quite interesting. As a fintech, you're constantly being almost crushed or at least attempted to be crushed by your incumbents, your competitors, the banks, the bigger institutions. How did you as a founding team, as Mitch, just wrap your head around competition and constantly having perhaps a bigger brother there that's got a much stronger balance sheet and can probably throw anything your way to squash this threat, right? Yeah. Which is something facing a lot of startups. I'm sure there's definitely that intimidation factor that if we disrupt an industry effectively, it could actually not be a good thing.
Yeah.
How do you talk through competition there?
Well, you have to understand why they're scared of you, firstly. So there's a threat that they're trying to deal with, and the only way they deal with it is to try and throw or sow some sort of fear in you. If you give in to the fear, that's you. Your business shuts down completely. If you fearless, I guess, you're going to carry on. The threat gets larger for them, and then the fear almost goes the other way. And they start acting out of character with their threats in a way where it starts becoming like a joke almost. And you can be like, these guys are on the back foot now. Let's attack. You have the lovely thing of the country is regulation, right? So, and that's the one thing they'll try and throw at you is regulation. But regulation, it's a guideline, and we were in a gray area, so we have a chance to come step up. The one interesting story is we won an award, and it was backed by an institution. And it was weird because we had already had words with these guys, and now we win an award that they've sponsored and run. So we get invited into their massive boardroom, and we sit in there, and they're like, and there's payments guys all over, but payments as in the traditional payments. And then there's us, and then there's the head guy there, and we're thinking, we're coming in here, we've shown them disruption, they're going to come and back us, and we're going to push on the back of their name. No. The guy was like, got this hat on, great job, I think you guys are amazing, what you're doing is awesome. Taking that off, putting on my bank hat, hate you guys, we're going to crush you. And we're like, what? And they're just telling us how we bad, and everybody's getting a turn to just like, take a stab at us. Myself, I'm quivering. I'm like, geez, this is like a massive bank here. And Thomas, geez, amazing guy. You can't scare him. He deals with the boogeyman. It's like, well, we are who we are. We've obviously scheduled enough for you to bring us into this room, so prepare for what's coming next. And the guy's like, why did we just buy you for 100 million? I'm like, geez, dude. Let's take it.
You're thinking about taking that.
Yeah, right? Sort out all our problems. Like, we can all live very nice lifestyles. Like, if you're willing to pay 100 mil right now, guess how much it's going to be worth in a few years' time. He was 100% right. Lyle and I have spoken about this so many times. I really appreciate Thomas for what he's done for the business. It's like, if it was just up to me and Lyle, we would have exited on like 200,000 rand. Yeah, great. We out.
I think that's also what makes a great CEO, and it's not just personality things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just the fortitude to stay the course. This is the vision we cast. We're going to be a massive disrupting force in this industry, in this country.
Yeah.
And, it would be tempting. I think most people in your position would go 100 million, even if I'm getting 10 million post-tax as a founder. That's more than most people earn, right?
Yeah.
So it can be a secret weapon to have a Thomas.
He knows his value and always knew the value of what the business could be. When we were dividing up the shares initially, I was like, this is all monopoly money. I don't care. Never could have seen where it was going to get to. He saw that. So I would say our tenacity and staying in the business and persistence at going and disrupting, I put that all on his shoulders. It was him. And we were just back in that and bringing the tech.
Okay, so we get to 2020.
Yeah.
And this is quite an interesting time in your life because, again, you've pushed through probably some of the barriers, the contention from competitors. You guys have raised some good capital up to this point. Certainly into the several millions of dollars. But 2020 becomes quite a significant year in 2021 because you have this revelation that, but you have this revelation that you're actually a great founder.
Yes.
And you've been in this business now for the better part of 6 years. Maybe talk us through this mental transition. Ozow is kind of within the next 12 months going to raise a significant round of capital, but something is happening on the Mitch front in the 12 months prior to that.
Yeah, well,
talk us through that.
The world goes into COVID, right?
Yeah.
So it's all shut down, and that's also what helps us hit certain targets faster than what we wanted to, because everybody has to now digitize their payments. We've been online for a very long time, and we're trying to go into the POS market because weekends, South Africans don't do stuff online on the weekends. We go to malls. We love our malls. So we needed to get into malls. And at the point of COVID happening, now the malls have to go online. So that's where we are. We're killing it there. I, as a founder, changed roles everywhere. So initially you said I was CTO. So I was joint CTO with Lyle. That's because we're both techies. And Thomas was CEO / marketer / sales. But again, Lyle, introverted, stays with the code. Me goes and sells with Thomas. So I become a salesman as well. And there's things you're going to have to do. There's roles that need to be fulfilled. And as a founder, you just have to fill it. So you pretend to the best of your ability to be a salesperson, an accountant, call sales agent, a lawyer. And that's what I did. Lyle was like, I'm a tech guy. Thomas was like, I'm CEO and sales and marketing. So I moved around the company role-wise, doing all of that. So I learned that you have to do what you have to do to make the business run until you can't do it any further. Then you have to get somebody in. But just because somebody has the experience of working at a call center for 12 years doesn't mean they're going to come in there and do a great job. So you have to give them context. So you'll hire the person, they'll come in and they'll have to sit in a supportive role with you and you lead in the way. And then that magic aha moment happens where you struggling with a question, and this is the real reason why you hired somebody because that was your limit. You couldn't go further, and they see you struggling and they step over the line, and then you're like, my son, you've graduated.
Yes.
And then still, you can't just, leave these guys. You still have to be there as a support channel. So you let them lead the way, and now you live in that support role. And then the most important part, which most founders struggle to do, is let go. And I'm really good at letting go. I want to free up my time as much as possible. So as soon as I see you competent enough, I let go. And by letting go, I can then move to the next position. So I was doing that throughout this, and I got to R&D. I figured this is my role. R&D is me. I'm not going to move further from here. In COVID, yes, our business saw a great uptake, but as everybody, we were struggling. We were to compete. Actually, we had so many new people come into the industry at that point, because everybody was like, everybody's going online, payments, let's go for it. And the best way these guys could come in was to just undercut you. So cheaper service everywhere else, and imitate whatever you've done. To a point where they've even copied our sales pitch word for word with spelling mistakes and send them off to places. Some guys even lied about what we do and our abilities to other people to get the clients. So now you're scrapping, you're fighting for things, and from an R&D perspective, I'm getting a lot of knocks on my door, like, what's the next thing that's going to
optimize?
Yeah, what's going to get us ahead of the game here? And R&D is a weird space, because you're testing, you're trying. Firstly, you're conceptualizing. Then you're testing, trying, failing. And you're like, well, that's not going to work. Or you test, you try, it works. Test it then with the commercial aspect. It's not really going to make us money. Cool, throw it in the bin again, start over. There's no ROI in that. And I started getting asked questions like, where's the ROI in running your department and all of that? And the one thing we said as founders was, if we can find somebody that does the job better than us, we'll hire them. Lyle and I both, at the CTO point, when we were still joint CTO, we found another CTO, hired him as our boss, and then worked underneath him because he was better. Again, Thomas and myself were butting heads at this point. So I was in a bad space because of that. Almost wanting to leave because of that. But I thought, okay, you know what? Let me interview people. Let me see what they can bring. And honestly, I was useless compared to these guys. These guys had run R&D projects for years before me. And I saw where I was failing. I'm like, Thomas is right. This company needs the best. It shouldn't take this mediocre stance that I'm trying to bring in. It needs the best it needs. So let's hire somebody else, put them in there. I'll do my support role, all of that, and then let go. And then the question is, what do you do next then? And I didn't see any other position I could go into where I would add value, because also I got into a point where anybody would leave. Everybody wants to leave their corporate job for a fun startup, but you don't want the insecurities of not getting a salary at the end of the month. Now you have a fun startup. It's basically a Google. Can pay your salary, match your salary, not maybe even better it, give you security and the fun of doing that. So these guys could just leave big jobs with big salaries, join us. There was no need for me to pretend and fill a spot anymore. And I keep telling people I'm motivated by death. So I'm going to die one day, as everybody else is going to die one day. But we try and prolong our death as long as possible. If my death is, let's say, in 100 years' time, what am I going to do with my time until I'm dead? I'm going to become so frustrated to a point where I'm going to bring that death date closer, which is why I believe rich people commit suicide, because they've just achieved everything they've achieved and lost purpose in that. So I was in that moment. I need to add value to a business. I can't sit here and be the mascot. That's essentially what I became, the mascot. All the new recruits, I would tell them the 4-hour story of how Ozow started. And I was getting tired of that, so they recorded it. I think till today they still play that video for them.
Sure.
And I started reading the stories of, Larry Page, when he left Google, what their resignation letter looked like, what their reasons were for it. Started reading stuff like, Elon Musk, where he moved on to the next point. How do you know that you're done? And the one description was going up a mountain. You're climbing up a mountain with a bunch of guys, and you're like, yeah. And then you get to a certain point where you're out of the woods, and you look across and you're like, what's that mountain over there? I think I want to be on that one. And then you have to go climb back down and climb that other mountain. But because you've climbed this mountain already, you know what tools you need when you get to the ice section, to the rock section, the powder. So you're a lot more well equipped to get up there. At this point also I started getting mentors, more high level mentors that have done great things in corporate before. I started speaking to them, to help me manage the relationships between founders, as well as, wanting to leave the business. What should I do? And they were very conservative. Like, you don't just leave. You need to find out what you're going to do next. There's a few things I thought I might want to do. Esports was going to be it. I was going to do esports. Okay. I loved the idea, and that's where I thought I was going to go, but ended up didn't go down that route.
Yeah, I mean, so much wisdom there, man, from getting the right counsel at the right time to, as a founder, knowing when you've perhaps outlived your value. Sometimes there aren't always just perpetual positions for you to take on, so you can still stay relevant in the company, sometimes in the best interest of the business. And this is one of the biggest things we chat to founders about is when is the right time to let go? I think you'd mentioned to me that you'd made this decision almost psychologically, that now was the right time. Thomas, to his credit, also wanted the exit to be favorable for you, and so you were in the process of looking to raise some significant capital for Ozow, and so he's really convinced you to stay on so that you get the benefit of that capital raise.
If we're going to send you off, let's send you off as a hero,
which is amazing to his credit. And Ozow goes on to raise a $48 million Series B in October 2021, led by Tencent. The headcount of the business is close to 140 folks at this point. So this is no longer really a startup. This is a real fintech success story, one of the biggest Series Bs raised by a fintech ever at the time. And this almost allows you now to go, okay, like I can transition out here.
Yeah. Look, it was a bittersweet moment almost.
Of course.
For the business. I remember this deal took 2 years.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And so for 2 years I was hanging on to that, like, let's call it 18 months. Like, I want to leave, I want to go, I want to plan my next thing, but I need to be part of this business and still earn my salary and provide value. I want to leave, but I also don't want to scare investors coming in going, why is a founder leaving the business?
That can completely throw a fundraise, right? Of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially, we had to say to the board what is going to happen. And the board was like, this is bad for the raise. But I mean, we just had to tell the story. I had gotten to the end of my value. You don't want this dead wood laying around there.
And the best boards and investors will be able to recognize that because they've bought into Mitch and they've bought into, they understand.
Yeah.
Right. Again, it's the sobriety that also makes you a great investor, I think, is that empathy and that EQ to go, okay, this happens in a great business. Okay. So Mitch, you've made this decision. You formally left the business post fundraise, which I'm sure was hard, but the right time. And fundraise closes October 2021. You do only get paid out your portion in kind of mid-2022. But in that time, you'd had this idea for, a new generation venture builder, which, again, is not an accelerator. It's not an incubator. It really partners with great startups, high-impact, high-growth, job-creating startups with capital and advice and workspace to increase their chance of success. And it's called Aeon's Creative Technology, which is doing some significant things. And maybe just talk to us about, firstly, what it's like waking up the day after you've actually been paid out from a business that you founded and you fought for so long. And again, this is years of debt and getting debt free and so much faith and so many risks and, you know, the ups and downs. It really is such a consummate founder journey. Talk to us about that day. Firstly, you woke up and you're like, oh, okay, I'm actually an exited founder now. What was that like?
So I'd already gone through a point of debt freeness.
Yes.
That day was like, so I'm a rap fan and I listened to The Roots, and there was also a book called Things Change in a Day. Just literally things change in a day, and that became like a concept I kept telling people. One day you broke, the next day you wake up and there's money in your bank account and it's all gone. It changes in a day completely. So when this happened, it wasn't like a new thing for me. I think it was very frustrating leading up to the point, because it wasn't like it's gonna happen on Valentine's Day, you know. It was like, oh, we have these last contracts we need to sign, and then hopefully next week. And then next week comes, and then nothing's there. So when it did come eventually, it was like, finally, I'm so happy I can move forward. In the meantime, you have to keep other people at bay, because you've told them what you want to do already. You got the vision, and everybody's like, Mitch, Ozow, Mitch, it's gonna take us to the next level. Yes. And I'm just feeling like a liar to them at this point. I think they're also getting frustrated with me. There was a lot of people I spoke to join the journey that today has not joined the journey with me. I think because of those talks. It wasn't a once-off payment also. Sure. I did a lot of juggling and a lot of chess plays. It happened for me in 4 phases.
Because there's a lot of expectation on someone as soon as they exit a business. People are always thinking, A, what is this person doing next? B, he's just come into money. Yeah. Right? So now all of a sudden you became the most popular guy, in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so, like, how do you decide? So firstly, is there this moment where you go, I can pretty much buy anything I want for myself now? And do you go on that spending spree, or do you go, actually, I also knew how hard this was to get to this point, so I'm actually a little bit more conservative, and I want to put this, you'd had the idea of Aeons already, and I know you're a purpose-driven founder, so, you know, you're probably reserving a heck of a lot of that for this new leg of the journey, but, you know, where was your head at there?
Well, that's obviously because I knew this was happening for months, maybe even a year. Yeah. I had spreadsheets of how I was spending this money. I was like, this is going to tax, this is happening here. And the difficulty for me is I didn't know what price I was going to sell at. Normally you sell at a discount. So I was working out the different discounts. If it's going to be a 10, a 20, a 30%, I'm like, I'm going to have to fight if we get to this point. Started speaking to other people, what they, obviously, because I had mentors, what would you do with the money here, what would you do there? Split up that spreadsheet, and then I found out, hey, it's going to be $1 payout. Now I'm like, okay, I need to work on what the dollar is. I'm a bit sad because like 2 weeks after I got paid out, it went from 14 to the rand to 18. And I could have made more money, but
of course.
It is what it is. And then tax is also very different because of how it happened. And then you got CGT, and it was. We also have to pay lawyers. What I'm going to do here.
So you're not actually sure exactly the number, right?
I was not sure what the number was. And I was just working out things on my spreadsheet, and I think if I look at it, there was like the payout sheet, and then there was a payout sheet rework, and a payout sheet 2023 or 2022 version, because I had a 2021 version, and I had to constantly change it. So when it came, I knew exactly where the money was going, and the portion I was putting towards Aeons as well was quite a significant part. And I'm grateful that my wife is like, you know what, she's like that. You've proven yourself financially to us.
Gives you autonomy.
Do what you need to do. Everybody else, when I told them how much money I'm putting into the business and how much, they're like, you know what else you can do with that money?
Yeah.
You can buy this house and that house and that house. I'm like, yeah, but then how long does that take? Yeah, but there's no risk. And like, if we lose it, we lose it. But also I need to also make sure the family's taken care of. So put this aside, invest that in a more conservative thing. So it's a mixed bag of not putting your eggs in one basket, which I did have before. Everything was in Ozow before. And now it's spread nicely, so I'm happy with that. I do also still want to touch on something very quickly, which I just remembered now. Yes, that day you get the money, there was no real click, but that next few months was rough. You're thinking and obsessing about what you're going to do next, how you're going to spend this money, what those calculations and those numbers look like. You've been struggling for so many years. So there's always this drive chasing, not just from me, from my wife as well. And then it's like, solved, done. Now it's over. No more drive left. So you almost switch off your anxiety mode, and that's when the real problems come in that you've been switching off the whole time. And for both my wife and myself, we ended up in a bad mental space. Because what next after that point? There's always a what next as you're struggling, but when you get to that point... But you've been
going so hard for so long, and now you don't have to.
Yeah, so
How did you cope with that?
She went to hospital. Okay. I didn't. Okay. I think I'm still coping with it in a way. Mix that in with a midlife crisis. I think I drank quite a bit as well. Did some stupid things. Yeah, it's rough. And till today, I would say I'm still struggling with that in a way. Like, which is why Aeon's like maybe almost great for me, because it reignites that chase again. Yeah. But sometimes, and this is me being honest, I feel like I got on this roller coaster. I got strapped in. We're on that first tick, 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 and it's about to dip. And I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to get off the roller coaster, but you can't.
Sure.
So you just have to go with it and make it work out. So it's, that chasing your dream thing. If you never realize your dream, then you're always chasing it. And that's what you're doing. But when you realize your dream and it's come true, then what? It's that then what moment, which is a massive issue. And I don't think anybody prepares you for that. Nobody tells you about it. Everybody tells you about raising and getting the exit, but not what happens afterwards.
So few people get there.
Yeah.
Right. So most of the narrative in the market is just keep pushing. It's going to finally materialize. There's actually so few people that materializes for. There's not much body of thought or advice or mentorship. Even your corporate mentors, they've not been in that position where you have this massive wad of cash and asset liquidity.
Yeah.
What do you do? Where does your mind go? How do you stay motivated? How do you manage family plus business? Like all these are the things that keep one up at night. How do you switch off, right? Because now you're so organized to go.
Yeah. We have to prepare the next guys for what's happening. When we were coming up, there was Shuttleworth, there was Vinnie Lingham, and there was Elon Musk, I guess.
But the stories were not well known.
And
the actual intimate stuff.
You watch like Social Network. One of the first scenes in that movie, Mark Zuckerberg is in a hall at a college thing. Bill Gates is busy speaking. Where are you going to get that? Yeah. In the States, you have so much access to that, and that's what's being created right now. And as the first era of people that have actually done it and are now motivating and inspiring other people, I can just imagine how that's going to spiral to become a shorter life cycle than the couple of years we went through for exit. You're going to find bigger companies, bigger exits, I guess more problems as well, and we have to guide these guys. So I think it's very important what's going on right now, what you're busy doing, and I also feel this heavy weight of responsibility on myself. It's exiting is incredibly mentally draining. Gives you financial freedom, but with great power comes great responsibility. Uncle Ben, he was right.
Wisdom before his years. Mitch, in the last couple of minutes we've got left, I'd love to just maybe give you the platform to talk about Aeons and where it's going and the big why behind it. We can see you've got a great heart for the ecosystem and building it and founders and supporting them. And of course, this is the primary effort of yours at the moment. So maybe talk to us about Aeons very quickly and what's exciting.
You said accelerator, you said incubator. Yeah. We spoke about being a founder, true founder. coincidentally, as I was exiting, a few companies were coming to me and saying, hey, I'm looking for a CTO to help me in my business. I'm looking for this. Can you help us find somebody? I'm like, nobody's going to join your company as a decent CTO because you can't pay them. There's no job security. And it's going to have to be something on the side. These guys are dedicated to their real jobs. They're not going to fulfill that. What you need is a guy that can fill the gap until these other guys are ready. Somebody like me. That's what I did. So I'm like, I'll do it for you, but how can I do it without you guys pay me a salary? I'll have to sell my shares. That's when the thought of exiting happened. And there were 3 companies that came to me with that same scenario. I'm like, how am I going to split my time across these guys? And I was looking for various ways of funding. And then I stumbled across BBBEE. Here's the interesting thing. During that time, I found that EE exists all over the world. It's employment equity. So the exact same thing exists everywhere, except because of apartheid here, we had to make it
for people of color.
Yeah, so it was BBEE, which is broad-based black empowerment equity. So I stumbled across this thing, and I finally understood how all the programs we went through, your incubators, your accelerators, were funded. It was through the ESD spend. These corporates would go partner with an institution and say, here's my BE money, I need my points. I don't know how to really spend this money. That's not my business. My business is making water. Can you help me get my BE points? And then they take that and they create pitch dens and all of these things, a pitching contest, and then the top 12 come in, and then they, and it really then becomes a branding exercise for the startup, well, not the startup, for the corporate to help sew back into that. And I don't hate that at all. The company's giving the money, they should get some sort of benefit out of it. But the problem for me lies in what happens with the startups, the beneficiaries of this funding. So you have the corporate, you have the beneficiary, and if the money just went directly, these guys will benefit directly off of it and do what they must from it. Now you got these guys that come in the middle and they say, well, we need to make some money. And in fact, they profit much more than what these guys are off of it. And that was my issue with incubators and accelerators. So I wanted to change that dynamic and actually get the beneficiaries to see more of that money itself. So I now position myself in the middle, speaking to a corporate, getting that funding, and then getting it to these guys. But again, let's look at the problem with these guys. These guys, they just want money. They all say, I just want money. I don't care about the other stuff. Yeah. You give them the money. A year later, they need more money. Have they grown? No. Some of these guys might have crashed. They failed as well. But it's one thing giving these guys the money, but you also have to control the way it's spent. You have to mentor them, coach them, teach them in the right way. So give them the money so that in a few years when they are asking for more money, they're at a better place, and they're asking for more money from a different source, not from BE money, from a VC. VC, venture capitalists, your private equity guys, they saying, I will never give this startup money until it raises its level here. Startup saying, I can't get there without your money. So it's this catch-22, and we come and step in. We say, okay, we're going to give you money, but just because we give you money doesn't mean you're going to get there. We're going to help you get there as well. So we take the guy up here, and then you VC ready, and then we take it to the VC, and the VC buys you off of us. Kind of like flipping houses. We take a broken house, paint it, bring the guys in, they buy it. Other problem we're solving is VCs. VCs are like, they call me, in fact, after I exit, do you know any startups that match this criteria? No. You know why? Because you guys won't invest in enough people at this level to bring them back up there, which is why they're failing here. And the stats is 50% of startups fail before 2 years. These guys will only invest in you if you're running for 3 years. So I'm like, you got a problem here. You got funds, but you can't disperse it because you don't have anybody that matches your criteria. You have maybe 2, 3, 4 at most, and everybody is hounding them like sharks. Once the investment's done, you have to go back to your funders and say, I can't disperse the funding. So you have a massive problem. Let me help you there. Let me build ventures for you till your level. Then you have access to this. And I try to do a few exclusive deals with people. And that's where the word venture building comes from. Same with the BEE deals. Go to a corporate, say, not only should we help these beneficiaries and build them up, but we need to take them back into your supply chain and also create products for you to on-sell. Add value into this. I know it's a garage spend, you're giving away the money, but let's make it count for the better. And that again is where the word venture builder comes from. We're building these guys. We're not just incubating them. We're not accelerating them.
And I think it's fair to say that with some experience and knowledge of the ESD, ED market, even in my personal capacity, most people running these programs on behalf of corporates, where the capital gets allocated, don't have great founding experience.
No. They've never started businesses
before.
So
from your side, you've got great founding experience. You've partnered with brilliant corporates already. You've landed a significant contract with the likes of Telkom earlier this year. And you're not just investing in traditional businesses. You do have everything from the likes of CBD-infused tea businesses to electric scooters and vehicles. So it's a really wide spectrum. And you can see a material impact having an operator, a great founder, and the programmatic support alongside this capital, as well as an incredible premises you've set up in the West Rand of Johannesburg, which I think is just fantastic. Fortunate to be at the opening of that last year, and so we encourage any of our listeners, if you want to go and check out the Aeon's campus, it's very exciting what they're doing out there. It's a hustle, it's a bustle, great companies being supported as well. And then very finally, you've also launched something called AEX, and I just want to give you the opportunity to talk to that as well. By the way, all of this, aeons.coza, aeons.co.za, please go and check them out. They're doing some wonderful things, and I'm sure you'll be able to connect with Mitch as well. But very quickly before we call it today, Mitch, tell us about AEX.
So the AEX is, if you go to the website, you just click on Invest in Startups. But if you want to go direct, it's wealth.aeons.co.za. So that essentially comes out of access. We need to create better access. We then took the shares we own, we put it on a blockchain, which fractionalizes everything, which then gives you the ability to actually buy a piece of a share, just like a Bitcoin would work, but we're not crypto at all. I would say we like crypto, but not crypto. We like an ICO, which is the initial coin offering, the way people were raising money in the past, but we're not. We like a GoFunder type thing. What do you call those platforms? Crowdfunding, yes. But we're not, because we've already given the founder money ahead of the time. So they're doing that. We're recovering the cost afterwards. We like the JSE, but we're not. You only have startups. Nowhere else in South Africa are you going to find a platform where you can take 50 Rand, invest in a startup right now. It's like coming to meet us at Ozow in 2014 or 2016, putting in that money, and in 2021, when we get that massive raise, getting a payout at that point. Nowhere else can you get that. And that's the platform we're creating there, hoping to then spread access to wealth to any South African. So now you have the access. It's just up to you to come put the money in. It then becomes a better funding mechanism for startups, helping the startups to grow, more jobs.
And again, these are all startups that are in the Aeons,
early stage and
in the Aeons venture builder. So you've got really direct line of sight as to how they're doing, how they're managing them. Money.
Yeah. In fact, we go so far as to guarantee a 10% year-on-year return, and that investment's for a minimum of 3 years, which means it's about 30% return you're going to get. You're not going to get that at the bank. So you might as well take the money out of the bank, put it with us, and in 3 years, if we fail, which I don't think we will, which is why we're giving the guarantee, you're going to get that money back. People ask, how can you guarantee that? We're taking the risk. It's what we do. If it doesn't work out,
you personally put a significant amount of your own capital behind each of these businesses, as well as Aeons itself. So it's not like you don't have skin in the game.
I have full-on skin in the game, and just to brag on myself a bit, which I don't do that often, all these programs are run and managed and funded by big corporates and big other businesses. I am one person funding all of this, and within 9 months, we scored a partnership with a Telkom. Never seen before. What we're doing is amazing. You asked the question earlier about startups and the threat. This is the threat. This is why we exist. I'm a threat. Aeons is a threat to the ecosystem. We are disrupting it completely. People will jump on board. 100% But if they don't, we'll make our difference where we can. People say that, what you're going to do if everybody starts adopting the same model like you? Great. The more people doing it, the more people we can help. I don't see you as competitors.
Sure. That brings our time to an end. I can't believe it. But Mitch, it's been an absolute pleasure hosting you on the Startup Club podcast. Thank you for sharing some of the intimate details of your journey. We are excited to see where things go to from here.
I'm excited to see not just my journey, but the entire ecosystem's journey. It's amazing so far.
Amazing. Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
That was Mitchan Adams, co-founder of Ozow and now founder of Aeon's Creative Technology. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe and share with your community. I'm Mathew Marsden. Thanks for joining us.